Welcome back once again to Sports Talk. I'm Chris Michael. And the big news down in the DMV region, the dismissal of John Thompson III as head coach at Georgetown and their men's basketball program after being there for 13 years. And, of course, the family legacy of John Thompson III. We're very pleased to be joined by the man who was all over this story for the Washington Post, Wang, with a very comprehensive story the day this story broke. And he's joining us right now. Gene, thanks so much for your time and welcome to Sports Talk.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be with you.
We appreciate you joining us. A very good article on what for me is sad news. I want to get your initial thoughts of this. I guess I should not have been surprised by this, especially in reading your article and some of the backstories and some of the things that were going on in the unrest among students, alumni, and so many other fans with Georgetown. But I thought the John Thompson legacy and the family name was going to be good enough to get him at least one more year. I know the losses have been there, some disappointing losses the last couple of years, but I thought Georgetown was going to give him one more year to try to right the ship, but obviously that was not the case. So your initial impressions of this dismissal?
Well, I thought going into the offseason after their last game, losing in the first round of the Big East tournament, that it could have gone either way, and neither result would have surprised me. If they kept him, like you said, and because of the John Thompson legacy, certainly that would have caught no one off guard. But then you look at their record, and the results just have not been acceptable for a program that has been at the top of the Big East for so long, or had been when John Thompson Jr. was there. You know, missing the tournament 3 out of the last 4 years, back-to-back losing seasons, which hasn't happened since the first season of John Thompson Jr. So you're talking about a very long time span there. So, yeah, plus the Board of Trustees decided that they're not necessarily married to having a Thompson run the program. So if you want to talk about moving forward, it may be the case that they don't hire someone with a part of Thompson's coaching tree to run the program going forward.
Did you get the impression, or did the university give one specific thing that kind of pushed this over the edge? Because it seemed that, again, according to your article, the fans were not unhappy. The students and the alumni had a petition with over 1,400 signatures calling for Georgetown to consider firing John Thompson. Some of the former players were on the radio a day or two before. Reggie Thompson and Michael Graham, former players under John Thompson, were calling for fresh air with the program and calling the current program a mess. So obviously it seemed like there was a lot of unrest for several different levels. Was there one particular thing that was indicated, or one thing that kind of forced Georgetown's hand?
Well, I think there were a combination of factors, and you referenced it. One was a toxic environment. I mean, you know, at games this season, fans were chanting, "Fire Thompson." And then on top of that, there was some unhappiness among former players who are loyal to John Thompson Jr. And then what I just mentioned a bit earlier about just the results weren't commensurate with what Georgetown expects from their basketball program. When you're at Georgetown, you expect to be contending for Big East titles every year. You expect to be going deep into the NCAA tournament. This Georgetown team was barely trying to stay above float ahead of teams like DePaul and St. John's, who are rebuilding in the Big East. So that just, in the end, wasn't good enough.
It seemed like the motion offense was never something that Hoya fans were very comfortable with. When John Thompson first took over and was having success, it seemed like they kind of lived with it. But in recent years, it seemed like there was a lot of complaining about the way he ran his offense. Was that another one of the issues?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with recruiting. And if you're a star player coming out of high school, do you want to play in a motion-based offense where you're where you're playing games in the 60s? Yeah. That to me doesn't strike me as, if you're an elite athlete, you want to score the basketball. You don't want to be part of the system. Okay, now that's great in the Ivy League where you don't have athletic scholarships. That can work at Princeton, and at Georgetown it can work too if you have the right players. I mean, John Thompson III has sent a lot of guys to the NBA, like Greg Monroe, for example, Jeff Green, Roy Hibbert. Those guys can run it because they're such a great, talented basketball players to begin with. But when you're looking for, in this day and age of one and done, getting a great athlete for a couple of years, bottling that and see if you can take a deep tournament run, those athletes just aren't coming to a program that's running this motion kind of offense.
I know the university is not anxious to have their student athletes running to the media following this news, but have you gotten a sense of any reaction from the players, current players, or a guy like Trey Mourning, who rarely played, the son of Alonzo Mourning, was there under John Thompson, rarely played this past year. He's one of the players that decided to leave Georgetown. Has there been any scuttlebutt or anything on social media that you've heard about from current or recent players?
Well, there's nothing public, no public comments since John Thompson III was dismissed. But on social media, you mentioned some players who defected, who left the program, like Isaac Copeland. he had put up some references to, not so pleasant references to his former coach after they had lost some games late in the season. So, and they've lost 4 players via transfer since August. So, and the most disheartening was losing the commitment of point guard Trey Waters out of high school. He was supposed to be their savior, their point guard who they haven't had in a while, now kind of revitalized the program. Amid the uncertainty of JT3's status, he decommitted and now has reopened his process of being recruited. So, I mean, all these signs pointed toward perhaps not the best ending for John Thompson III.
Mm-hmm. Our special guest this segment, Gene Wang, a sports writer for the Washington Post who covered the dismissal of John Thompson III at Georgetown. How do you see the process going forward for the university? Paul Tagliabue, a former NFL commissioner who's a graduate of Georgetown, is on the board. He's going to be involved in the process. There's rumors Patrick Ewing, Sr., might be interested, or one of the candidates. His son, Pat Ewing Jr., was on John Thompson's staff last year. Do you think they would stay in-house, or do you think they're going to go and open things up and cast that broad net, as they say?
Well, based on our reporting, Patrick Ewing may be a little bit conflicted, because of how it ended for the Thompson family, John Thompson III. Obviously, Patrick Ewing, a loyalist to John Thompson Jr., was the best player in program history, won a national championship at Georgetown. But still, you wonder, given how it ended for the Thompson family, if Georgetown wants to bring another Thompson legacy back to run the program, or split completely and go in a different direction with, for example, a coach like a Shaka Smart or a Tommy Amaker or a Mike Bray. Mike Bray and Tommy Amaker, both from the D.C. area.
Yeah.
So it will be coming home for both of them. And Shaka Smart, formerly of VCU, now Texas, knows how to recruit the area. And if you look at the way he played defense, we know that Habit defense in Virginia Commonwealth, that fits right into what John Thompson Jr. had built during the beginning of his legacy, when they had a defense that no one wanted to face at all. And that's how they won all those Big East championships.
Do you anticipate this will take some time? I know they're probably anxious to get someone on board and firm up the recruitment, especially I believe they only have just 8 scholarship players right now on the roster. So do you think they'll move quickly, or could this take some time?
I think the sooner the better for them, and it could be as soon as this week that they make an announcement. If you look at the coaching carousel, is already revolving. We see what happened in Indiana. They fired Tom Crean. You see Will Wade go from VCU to LSU. GW today just named Maurice Joseph their head coach after he was interim. So, yeah, programs are kind of getting their top level set in place. And right now it's a bit chaotic at Georgetown. In order to be able to get the program running in the right direction again, they want to get this done, to hire sooner so that recruiting can start and they kind of start rebuilding the program.
Before we let you go, what's the process going forward for the John Thompson family? They have that recently built facility, the John Thompson Athletic Center. A number of former athletes under John Thompson Jr. and John Thompson III, former athletes contributing quite a bit of money for it to be built. And John Thompson Jr., of course, was just about at every Hoya game ever since he stepped down as head coach. How does the family move forward from this?
Well, you mentioned the $60 million athletic center on campus named for John Thompson. Yeah, he has that building. He has a statue inside that building. He still has an office in that building. So that's not going to change whoever the coach is going to be. Whoever the new coach coming in is, he's going to know the legacy of the Thompson family. And that's why the Georgetown basketball program is what it is. And that's why it is a desirable job. So, and John Thompson still goes to every home game. He has the same seat at Verizon Center on the corner on the baseline near the Georgetown bench. I don't suspect that's going to change either. So John Thompson Jr. is always going to be part of the program, but the new coach just has to be himself and run the program the way he wants to do it. He's not hired to be another John Thompson Jr., whoever it's going to be. So that's going to be the difficult job. You always going to have that shadow of John Thompson Jr. kind of looming over you, but you need to move in your own direction.
That's a great point. Gene, thanks so much for joining us and for your insights, and continued success with you and your colleagues at the Washington Post covering this story.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you again.